Democrats need to pick up Senate seats this year, and they're trying to do it by replaying a past strategy. There's just one big problem. All right, first, let's set the table here, because the Senate races this year are extremely important. Remember, right now, Republicans have a 53 to 47 seat majority in the Senate, so Democrats need to win 4 seats in order to win a majority. And while that's really important for the short term, winning the Senate would shut down Trump's judicial nominees, for example, it's also important longer term. As much as it may feel like Trump has been and will be president forever, he is leaving in less than 3 years. There will be a new president after 2028. And if it's a Democrat, it is crucial for him or her to have a Democratic Senate. Without it, their entire agenda is dead. And the 2028 Senate map is pretty tough for Democrats. There's only one Republican-held seat in a state Joe Biden won, Wisconsin, and 0 up in states that Kamala Harris won. Even if Democrats win the White House in 2028, they need to pick up at least some Senate seats this year to make sure they're close to the majority next cycle. And that is the reason that Democrats have tried so hard to recruit good candidates in a lot of Senate races this year. Now, these candidates are not all alike. Some of them are much stronger than others, some of them have a much better shot than others, but they're all part of a clear strategy that has worked for Democrats before, and they're trying to replicate it again this year. Pop your collar and put on your skinny jeans, we're going back to 2006. In the lead up to the midterms that year, no one was really betting on Democrats to have an enormous year. They hadn't held the US House for 12 years, they had failed to beat George Bush in 2004, they had lost ground in the 2002 midterms and the 2004 elections. So even though Bush was getting more unpopular, it wasn't clear that Democrats could really pull off a big victory. So they went with a new strategy. They would aggressively recruit different kinds of Democratic candidates, sabotage their opponents in the primary, and go on offense everywhere they could. In Pennsylvania, they recruited Bob Casey, an anti-abortion Catholic Democrat. In Missouri, it was Claire McCaskill, who was tough on illegal immigration. In Montana, they ran John Tester, who was pro-gun and pro-fossil fuel. In Ohio, it was staunchly anti-free trade, pro-union Sherrod Brown. And all of them won, partly because the environment became really good for Democrats with Bush's unpopularity, but partly because they fit their states, culturally, demographically, and ideologically. It was a really successful strategy, and it helped the guy behind it, New York Senator Chuck Schumer, begin to climb the ladder that eventually made him Democrats' current Senate leader. Now, Schumer wants to run that strategy again, and he has gotten some early success. In the past couple months, Democrats have gotten top-tier candidates to run in a bunch of Senate races. In North Carolina, former Governor Roy Cooper, who won the governorship there twice while Trump won the state the same night, is now running for the state's open Senate seat. In Ohio, that guy we just mentioned, former Senator Sherrod Brown, who won in 2006, 2012, and 2018 before losing in 2024, is running again. Former Congresswoman Mary Peltola is running in Alaska. She represented the entire state. And in Maine, current Governor Janet Mills is running for the Democratic nomination to go against Susan Collins, who is the last senator in the country representing a state that the other party has won the last 3 presidential election cycles. These candidates are all different, but the uniting thread is that Democrats think they are the best possible fit for their states. And because they're now all running, Schumer is now publicly predicting that Democrats will win the Senate majority outright in 2026. And he's explicitly comparing this year to 2006. There's just one small problem. The world has completely changed since then. Firstly, different parts of the country now vote more and more differently from each other. We've talked about this on this show a lot, but it really does bear repeating. The way Americans vote has radically changed over the past 20 years or so. Think about it this way. Say you have 5 people of different heights, and they average together to be 6 feet tall. It used to be that states' voting patterns were like this: 5'10", 6'2", 6 feet, 5'11", 6'1". Different from each other, but mostly close together. Now, it's more like this: 5'4", 6'6", 6'7", 5'7", 6". The average is the same. Nationally, we're still closely split between the parties, but the individual contributors are much farther apart. Even the Senate races Democrats win are good examples of this. In 2010, New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand won her first Senate race by 27 points. The Republican won 8 counties, and the map looked like this. In 2018, she won by a larger margin, 34 points, but the Republican won 27 counties, and the map looked like this. And this is true all over the country. In 2018, Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin won re-election by almost twice the margin she first won in 2012, but she won 7 fewer counties. In Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar won her first Senate election in 2006 by 20 points, and her Republican opponent won only 7 counties. 12 years later, she won by a larger margin, 24 points, but her opponent won 36 counties. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong or suspicious about this. Democrats have just lost ground in more rural, smaller areas, so there's a lot more red on the map, because most of America's geography is those rural, smaller areas. Republicans have also lost ground in cities and suburbs. As a reminder, going from 30% to 20% in a city or metropolitan area represents millions and millions of votes. But that's mostly just made small blue dots go from medium blue to dark blue, which is much less noticeable on a map. This, of course, is where the "look at all that red" maps go viral. And Democrats are mostly right to roll their eyes at those memes. But when it comes to Senate races, there is something wrong with this. By the way, if you like what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support us. And if you like my work, you can subscribe to my newsletter at thelongrun.news. Over the past 40 years, the number of states in which one presidential candidate won by 15 points or more has skyrocketed. In 1976, it was just 10. In the 1990s, it was fewer than 20. Then in the 2000s, it began to explode. By 2020, 30 states were decided by 15 points or more, even as national elections overall remain close. And the upshot of that is clear. Fewer and fewer states are truly competitive. More and more states are voting for one party or the other by landslide margins, which makes it super hard for a member of the other party to win Senate elections there. It's just fundamentally much more difficult for a Democrat to win a state Trump won by 30 points than one he won by 13, and vice versa. And because most of the country's states are more rural, more white, and more conservative than the country overall, this gives Republicans a big boost in Senate races. And this is a crucial difference between 2006 and 2026. The pool of places in which both parties, and especially Democrats, have a credible path to competing is way smaller, and the path to winning is steeper, even if you do have great candidates. Secondly, Americans' views of politics have changed. This is something a couple people have pointed out. Schumer is trying to run the same strategy as 2006, even as the basic rules of politics have changed. Since 2006, Americans have twice elected a half-term black senator as president and twice elected a billionaire, who was the first person ever not to hold prior government office and win the presidency. The basic rules have changed, and they've changed largely because Americans have grown so disgusted and disillusioned with our political system that they're more and more willing to try something new. And if Democrats want to win, that might necessitate a different approach. Maine's Senate race is a good example of this. Establishment Democrats like Schumer recruited the incumbent governor Janet Mills into the race. And traditionally, incumbent governors are great Senate candidates. But she has some big limitations. She's been in politics for decades, she's 78 and would be the oldest freshman senator ever, and she's shown a streak of being closer to business interests, vetoing some things like labor protections or right to repair laws. In short, at a time when Americans hate the political establishment and political insiders, her profile is much closer to establishment than outsider. That's part of why she's in a tough primary against Bernie Sanders-endorsed Graham Plattner, who's running on a progressive, populist platform. Now, Plattner has his own problems and limitations too, but there is a case to be made that in 2026, when Americans hate and distrust the establishment way more than they did in 2006, he is more the spiritual fulfillment of the 2006 strategy than Mills. Finally, and crucially, Donald Trump is, so far, not on George Bush's trajectory. As I said before, a key ingredient in Democrats' 2006 comeback was the perfect storm that emerged for Bush. Moderates and independents were only part of this. Bush was also declining a lot with Republicans. A lot of conservatives had also started to dislike Bush. He was spending a ton of money, racking up big deficits, and pushing immigration reform conservatives did not like. One poll in spring 2006 showed more than a quarter of registered Republicans disapproving of Bush. Another found 40% of conservatives disapproving of him. Unlike Trump, Bush simply did not have the inclination or the ability to tap into populist conservatism. That all meant that by the time the midterms came around, not only did Democrats, independents, and moderates really dislike Bush, but he also didn't have anyone loving him, riding hard for him, defending his record. Trump, however you feel about him, is not in the same position. He still has an incredibly passionate base. They might be a minority, but they provide Trump much more commitment and love and loyalty than Bush ever commanded. That's not to mention another crucial difference. We are not in the middle of two wars. This is something that is really worth remembering. In 2006, America was fighting two multi-trillion-dollar wars in which American soldiers were dying every day. Whatever you feel about Trump's second term, however much you might dislike or disagree with some of his actions, the reality is he has not gotten America into the same position. Striking civilians in the Caribbean or sending troops into Venezuela are, under any reasonable definition, acts of war, but they are not remotely the kinds of wars we were involved in back then. All of these factors opened up a path for Democrats to make the kind of populist America First argument that Trump himself would adopt a decade later. This time around, that's a lot harder. The roles have changed, their opponent is stronger, less weighed down by wars, and he has a larger base of hardcore supporters. And that is something Democrats really need to take seriously. Maybe Americans really will agree with their argument that Trump is too distracted by other things, too focused on stuff abroad, and not focused enough on the economy here at home. Some polls recently are flashing alarm bells for Trump on this, showing majorities believe he doesn't care about people like them or know what they're going through. But even if the strategy ends up working for Democrats, the victory might still look a lot different from 2006. What do you think? Do you think Democrats actually have a shot at winning the Senate majority this year? What red state seat do you think is most likely to flip? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know every time we post a video. And if you want, you can subscribe to my newsletter at thelongrun.news.